Thank you very much. So avatar customization is a feature that's offered in many computer and video games. Customization options are presented to users via character creation interfaces, or CCIs, such as the one shown here for the game EVE Online. Research on avatar customization is typically focused on user avatar identity or self-representation in games. In general, we've found that the user experience, or UX, of avatar customization has been largely overlooked in academic literature. So here we look to existing research on UX in order to propose how its methodologies may be used to study the impact of CCI affordances on player experience. In this paper, I'll briefly discuss two studies designed to this end, one previous study and one future study, as well as some of the contributions of these studies and what they bring to our understanding of avatar customization. However, the purpose of this paper is more of a call to action, an invitation to the community to consider the use of these methods to investigate self-representation in games and the affordances of character creation interfaces. So CCIs do differ greatly between different games, independent of genre, with regard to their affordances or the quality and quantity of customization options present. EVE Online, for example, has a very complex user or character creation interface. Here we have the web-based MMOG RuneScape 3. So although both games are technically MMOGs, EVE Online is a graphics-intensive, subscription-based online game, and RuneScape is a free-to-play, web-based browser game. EVE Online offers a complex CCI that allows the user to create realistic-looking, highly detailed humanoid avatars. Selections can be made through the interface for each of the avatar's physical properties. But in addition to that, the user can actually use the cursor to adjust the mesh of the avatar, so they can really sort of it's almost like putty when they change the avatar's body. Comparatively here with RuneScape 3, we have the ability to change our hair color, skin color, hairstyle, and clothes, but beyond that, the avatars are quite plain. And this isn't, of course, to knock the game itself, but just to show that there are differences within the same genre. So these are just two examples of how CCIs can be drastically different. Although many CCIs offer common features, such as changing your avatar's hair color or hairstyle, each game offers different options depending on the game genre, the world aesthetic, and graphics capabilities of the game. Furthermore, these interfaces may use any style or interface widget to present these choices to players, like some shown here, some of these different types of sliders that are common. All these affordances have an impact on self-representation in each game that the player plays. So in order to better understand how CCIs are leveraged by players in-game, we look to UX research and its methodologies. We propose that the use of such methods provides us with a meaningful data on the effect of CCI affordances on player experience. We also believe that such data can both support scholarly work on identity in games, as well as inform future CCI design practices in industry. Although avatar customization has been widely studied, much of the related work in this area is focused on identity and commonly uses distance methods like surveys or online ethnography to collect data on self-representational practices. So for example, papers that utilize surveys tend to ask users to reflect on their avatar customization strategies, possibly across multiple games, or often to compare their offline appearance with their avatar's appearance. In these papers and others like them, CCIs are sort of framed as tools that the user uses to customize their online persona. These papers often benefit from large, diverse data sets, which is an affordance of the method, but the data falls short in being able to capture what happened in situ when the avatar was created. So in other words, the common internal versus external validity trade-off that we're all too familiar with in HCI. The preference for fieldwork or a lab-based methodology is more prevalent in studies where researchers want to observe offline behaviors that are strongly correlated to a specific effect. So for example, the effect of avatar appearance on helping, motivation, or cheating. So rarely do lab-based studies focus on the actual customization of the avatar itself or the creation of the avatar. While many CCIs do offer an extensive range of customization options, research has shown that through affordances, CCIs have the potential to represent socially exclusive values. Both the quality and quantity of options present in a given CCI determines how significant identity categories such as gender and ethnicity may be represented via avatar bodies. In these studies, researchers looked to interface analysis as a means to study the effects of affordances on social inclusion, but did not study user interactions with the interface in concert with this data. So although well suited to qualitative studies on identity, we believe that such methods cannot be used effectively when studying the effects of CCI affordances on player experience. So in order to address this limitation, we look to UX methods as an alternative approach to the study of self-representation in games. User experience, of course, is a branch of HCI research concerned with the emotional and affective aspects of a user's interaction with a given artifact. Although UX is proven to be a somewhat elusive concept, it is defined as a person's perceptions and responses that result from the use or anticipated use of a product, system, or service. In the context of UX, perceptions include their emotional responses and behaviors, as well as their beliefs. And responses include both the physical and physiological responses of the user. Such a broad definition has resulted in the recruitment of a broad array of methodological approaches to sort of address these concerns. So for example, to collect emotional, perceptual, and physiological data. Research has shown that even among UX researchers, that the nature and scope of UX is often considered to be dynamic, context-dependent, and subjective. User experience has been used in HCI research involving games. Notably, a recent paper by Neki et al. Introduces a framework for utilizing UX methods in the study of serious games. So the authors group popular UX methods by their relevance to three specific goals of assessment: assessing game system experience, assessing individual player experience, and assessing player context experience. Taking some of the aforementioned limitations into account, we discuss how a few scenarios in which UX methods may be applied to the study of self-representation in games. We believe that such methodological approaches may provide more holistic theory of self-representation and could support more robust design and development of CCIs in future. So to this end, I'll briefly describe two studies. The first, which is previously published on a microethnographic lab-based study, and the second is our future work looking at eye tracking. So in our lab, we've used a microethnography in order to study both isolated participants and co-situated groups of players. Microethnography involves the simultaneous video capture of the game screen and the participants playing. Video data is then entered into behavioral analysis software and coded. Although survey data has the ability to represent a large population and generate good statistical significance, surveys on avatar customization fail to provide researchers with information about how CCI affordances were negotiated by players and how they came to create the avatar they're describing in the survey. Even if the survey includes questions that require them to reflect upon this process, observational methods allow researchers to collect data on the avatar creation process as it happens. In our own research, we found that both co-situated play as well as spontaneous discoveries within the CCI had an impact on self-representational strategies. Furthermore, these strategies represented a shift from those collected in our survey data. So for example, one player, a Caucasian gentleman who had long red hair, indicated in his survey that he almost always likes to recreate his physical appearance in games. However, he ended up opting for a green mohawk in the game when he found this was a sort of a spontaneous discovery and affordance of that particular CCI. Our observation of this participant does not invalidate his survey data, but it does make a case for further exploration of lab-based observational methods in avatar studies. Eye tracking has long been established as a useful data collection method to help researchers in analyzing interface use. Its use in UX methods can help to infer cognitive and attentional processes, which can help researchers understand the effect of perceived affordances of the CCI on customization. In our own research, we found that experienced players, for example, are more likely to access avatar customization options that are located in submenus, where novice players are less likely to do so. This has inspired us to look to eye tracking as a means to better understand each of the players' perceptions and responses when interacting with complex CCIs in relation to their expertise level. Unfortunately, I don't have any more preliminary findings to share on the study as we're just starting it now, but hopefully in CHI 2018. So in conclusion, avatar customization is just one facet of self-representation in games. Interfaces used to customize avatars differ from game to game, both in terms of presentation and the range of customization options that are available. As gaming technologies continue to advance, CCIs may become increasingly complex. Our primary motivation in promoting UX methodologies for the study of avatar customization is to acknowledge that customization strategies are diverse, contextual, and social. Thus, the most important takeaway message from this presentation is my invitation to games and HCI scholars to consider the use of UX in studying self-representation in games. These methods not only provide researchers with more nuanced data, the resultant data could also help us improve upon CCI design. By understanding how interface affordances are perceived and leveraged by players, designers and developers may be able to design CCIs that are more accessible to novice players and more socially inclusive. Thank you.
Since this was an award-winning paper, there's a
Thank you very much.
So you have time for
Hi there, Erin Bueller, UMBC. Thank you for your talk. It's really fascinating stuff. I was curious if you had any thoughts on perceptions of like the default settings for a lot of games that, in my limited experience of avatar construction, the default tends to be like a male character or a white character, and then you can manipulate the interface to get to other ethnicities and other genders. Do you feel like there's anything telling about having the default be a particular subset of people and how that might affect players?
Yeah, we've done a little bit of work in that in our social inclusion research, because you're right, it almost always defaults to a Caucasian male character. And of course, the player is always welcome to move away from that, but why it defaults at all is kind of, it's curious, because not all games do. Some will just randomly populate the interface and the user can pick whatever they want. So I'd be curious to know how much of that on the industry side is intentional, or if it's it's kind of happening just because, or because they see themselves in the avatar. Sometimes when there are games that allow for avatar customization but are marketed with a particular permutation on a lot of the documentation, then we see that usually being presented first. Like in Saints Row 4, you start off the customization by choosing a different magazine cover, and the cover that's on top of the pile is the guy who's on the box art, even though you can move away from him and be nearly anything you want. But it's definitely a concern in our research and something we want to look into more.
Cool, thank you.
I was curious about the complexity of the CCIs and how that might be related to, say, the complexity of the game itself or players' expectation of the complexity of the game. Because, so the first example was EVE Online, which is sort of known for being, a very complicated and detailed sort of interface.
EVE really enjoys its learning curve.
Yeah. So it seems like that had also carried over to the character creation, even though I don't know if you actually even see the character that much.
No, not really.
Online, it's mostly like the ship.
Yeah,
so
really, you just kind of get your portrait, and that's about,
Yeah, so I was curious if the complexity of the character creation and the complexity of the rest of the game are something that designers or developers might try to align.
Yeah, I think so, because a lot of affordance isn't just related to like the capabilities of technology, but also the aesthetics of the game. So Saints Row 4 is a favorite example where you can create someone with green skin if you want to, because the game is a tongue-in-cheek clone of the Grand Theft Auto series. Whereas something in World of Warcraft, they have a very sort of crafted aesthetic in the game world. They don't want to let you deviate from that too much, which is why you can't choose more than 10 heads and 10 hairstyles and whatnot. So I think that's really where it comes down to, is the way aesthetics shape the affordances. But still, I think within that, there's still the capability to be more inclusive, while still sort of maintaining the authenticity of the designer's vision. Hi.
Hello, my name is Romina Carrasco from Melbourne University, and I am interested in your methodology. Did you were looking at people for a longer period of time, as avatars continually change, and it's different from people who are beginning or people who are playing a long time, or even players continually change. So I was wondering.
Yeah. So with the microethnographic studies, we had them complete an 88-question survey prior to coming in, as well as what we call the travelogue, where they provided some of their background experience playing different MMOs. So we got to see some of their avatars that they've had for years and years. When they came in, we had them play Rift, because at the time it was a brand new game, so we knew they hadn't had any experience with it. So they created the avatar, and they played either alone or with their friends that they brought in for about 45 minutes to an hour. So there was a play moment attached to it, which we hoped to sort of use as a way to validate the avatar customization, that it wasn't a throwaway avatar, they were going to be using it for a little bit. But you're right, avatar customization trends or strategies for each user do shift over time based on their experience and expertise. That's something that we're looking to capture as well in future work.
And continuing with this, I'm curious if they try to replicate an avatar that they had before, or something they were looking for.
So in some cases, we found that they did, because we compared it to their other avatars, and we found they were sort of trying to, like you said, create a sort of common look that they had across multiple games, what Pierce calls a transludic identity. But we also found some of them that so when they're playing Rift, for example, it's a faction-based game. So if they want to play together, they have to choose the same faction. And right off the bat, that choice of faction gets rid of 50% of the customization options. So if they want to play the Guardian, which are the good guys, that's where all the light skin colors and more humanoid-looking avatars are. If they wanted to play Defiant, that's where all the darker skin colors and the more sort of monstrous-looking avatars are. So right off the bat, that choice had an impact on what they did in the lab. So there's definitely a lot more going on, and we really enjoyed seeing that as it unfolded, and something that we might not have caught if we just used the distance method alone.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks.